The rain fell in thin silver lines, blurring the glass of my apartment window. It wasn't even past 7, too early for anyone to be banging on my door. But there they were, my mother, my sister Clara, Ethan, and the kids, all standing on the steps with suitcases lined up like they'd just been dropped off by a cab. Pajamas under jackets, tired faces, and not one call the night before to ask if it was okay. I stayed still on the upstairs landing, holding my breath. My stomach tightened the way it always did when I felt trouble brewing. But this time I wasn't running to the door. I wasn't opening it. Then I saw her pull out her phone. For a second, I thought she was going to call me, to start the usual lecture right through the receiver. But no. My phone lit up with my father's name. She wasn't calling me, she was calling him. Through the narrow crack in the curtain, I saw her pacing, her voice rising just enough to carry through the drizzle. "Honey, your crazy daughter won't let us in. We're stuck on the stairs with our stuff." Each word was aimed at me. Even though she was speaking to him, every syllable hit like a slap. Saying no had never been enough for her. Now she wanted him to make me say yes. I could almost picture him in his office chair, sighing quietly, already planning how to smooth things over without asking what it would cost me. The phone buzzed again, his name glowing on the screen like a decision already made. The vibration in my hand dragged me backward in time. My father had always been the peacemaker, the voice that came after her shouting. When I was little, she made the rules and broke them when it suited her. He stood behind her, nodding, whispering, "It's not worth the fight." That was his favorite line, peace at any price, even if the price was me. I remembered the night before prom, when she decided I couldn't go because the house wasn't spotless. I'd spent the week juggling homework and my part-time job at the cafe, and when I finally sat down, she turned it into a punishment. My father drove me to school the next morning in silence, never asking if I was okay, only murmuring that I should drop it, that upsetting her would ruin everything. College wasn't any different. During finals at the University of Washington, she called 3 times in 1 week to babysit Clara's kids. I told her I couldn't, but then came my dad's voice on speaker. "She just needs you for a bit. You're good with them. Your mom's tired." So I went. I always went. And the grade I lost that semester? It never mattered to them. Now standing in my own apartment, their shadows stretched across my porch, and that same old pressure built again. Her sharp voice, his quiet push. The same script they'd always used. She demanded, he reasoned. I folded. The rain drummed against the window like a clock ticking inside my chest. I stared at the phone in my palm, his name glowing like an order. My thumb hovered, knowing that answering would mean giving in again. Instead, I set it down on the counter and let it buzz itself silent. The knocking outside grew louder, Clara's voice joining in, trying to sound reasonable. I stood perfectly still. For once, I didn't have to move. From the window, I watched my mother tilt her chin up, her voice rising just enough to carry down the street. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every word was a performance, and not just for my father, but for the neighbors walking their dogs, for anyone watching from their porches. "We're stuck here in the rain," she said, dragging out each word, "with the kids, all our bags, and she won't let us in." A man with a red umbrella slowed by the sidewalk, pretending to check his watch but really listening. My mother had her audience. Clara shifted her weight, whispering to Ethan, who just stared at the ground. One of the kids sat down on a suitcase. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Dad. "What are you doing?" "Just let them in." I stared at the message until the words blurred. He hadn't been there 2 weeks ago when I messaged him about needing space after the procedure. He hadn't been there when I asked for just 1 month of quiet to heal. He hadn't been there when I said I couldn't carry everyone else's weight while trying to stand on my own. And now, the only time he reached out and was to tell me to surrender, the unfairness hit like a fist. My mother knew how to spin her stories, and my father always chose the easy road, my silence. Together, they made me the villain, the selfish daughter who locked her family out. The voices outside rose again, each word another hook trying to pull me back into their rhythm. I pressed my hand to the counter, grounding myself in the quiet of my kitchen. For once, I wasn't the one knocking. I wasn't the one explaining. Through the glass, I caught her looking up, daring me to appear. Instead, I stepped back into the hallway, pulse steady, waiting for her next move. Her voice blurred into background noise as another memory took hold. 5 years ago, February. Pneumonia had me shaking under blankets, ribs aching with every breath. I was told not to leave my room, to rest, to stay calm. But that night, the walls shook with music and laughter. I dragged myself up, blankets still around my shoulders, and found the living room full of strangers. My mother stood at the center like a queen, glass in hand, smiling. "It's just a few friends from work," she said, waving me off. My orchid had been shoved into a corner, couch cushions piled up to make room for a folding table covered in paper plates. And there was my father, leaning near the fireplace, nodding politely to someone I didn't know. He saw me. I saw the sweat on my face, the tremor in my hands. And still, he looked away. Not a word. Not even a glance that said he saw how sick I was. When I asked him later why he didn't stop her, he rubbed his temple and whispered the same old phrase. It wasn't worth the fight. And somehow, that one sentence had followed me my entire life. His quiet permission for her to take and take, while I learned to stay small. Standing in my kitchen, listening to the voices outside grow sharper, I finally saw the truth. The betrayal was never just hers. It was theirs. She said the words, but he carried them in silence, steady as stone. The weight of both pressed down until my jaw tightened. Through the rain-blurred window, I watched my mother gesturing dramatically, pulling Clara closer like she was part of a scene she'd rehearsed 100 times. I yanked the curtain shut in one sharp motion, cutting off her show. The kitchen went quiet again, and for the first time that morning, I breathed without shaking. The stillness wrapped around me, holding me steady for whatever came next. By the next afternoon, the rain had softened to mist when I heard a light tap at the back door. Not my mother's hard knocking. This one was gentle. When I opened it, there stood Ivy, my old college friend, holding a paper bag of pastries. She lived just 2 blocks away, and somehow she always showed up when I needed her most. She stepped inside, setting the bag on the counter. "Your porch was the talk of the street yesterday," she said quietly. Half the neighborhood was whispering. I didn't answer, but I guess my silence told her enough because she lowered her voice. "I saw something else too," she continued. "At Clara's house, new people moving in. Washington plates, beach chairs, coolers. Looked like they were settling in for the summer. I checked the listing later. It's up on Airbnb. 2 months blocked out." Her words hit harder than that knock on my door. 2 months. Not a week, not a weekend emergency, and a plan. My mother and Clara had rented out the house, pocketed the money, and decided I'd be their free alternative. Ivy's eyes searched mine. "You didn't know, did you?" I shook my head, feeling the betrayal pierce straight through. Then another realization followed. My father's call. The way he hadn't sounded surprised, only tired. He knew, he had known, and he said nothing, letting me find out like this. The silence between us stretched, filled only by the hum of the fridge. "They wanted me to carry it," I muttered finally. "All of it." "And he let them." Ivy touched my arm gently. "Then don't." Her certainty startled me, but it felt like oxygen after drowning. I folded the bag of pastries shut, no appetite left, but her words stayed in my chest. For the first time, I believed I could refuse. That night, I checked my locks twice before bed, already listing what else needed to change. 2 days later, I sat in the leasing office of a red brick building on Capitol Hill, signing my name over and over. The pen felt heavy, not with fear, but with certainty. I'd lived there 6 months already, subletting from a coworker, but this time the lease was mine alone. No one else's name. No cosigner. No shadow of permission. The manager smiled as she slid the folder across the desk. "Welcome officially," she said. I nodded, tucking it under my arm like armor. That afternoon, I called a locksmith and watched him replace the deadbolt. Ivy's words echoed in my mind, "Then don't." Boundaries weren't selfish. They were survival. Each lock clicked into place with a finality I had never dared claim before. For years, my parents' needs had leaked into every corner of my life. Now, for the first time, I was sealing off my own. As the locksmith left, I boiled water for tea. The quiet steadied me. My phone buzzed, my father's name flashing again. I let it ring twice before answering. "Altha," he began, voice low, tired. "Your mother says this is going too far. Don't embarrass us. Just let them stay a while. Embarrass us." The words landed like stones. It was never about me or how I felt, but about how it looked. Keeping the family image spotless while I paid the price. I closed my eyes, forcing calm into my voice. "Dad, they rented out Clara's house. They planned this. You knew. Silence. Then his soft sigh. It's complicated. No, I said firmly. It's simple. I can't be the solution anymore. He didn't argue, but his silence said enough. The same silence that had always chosen her side. I hung up before it could flatten me. The kettle whistled, sharp and bright. I poured the water and watched the steam rise, the air finally clean. For the first time, the door between us didn't feel fragile. It was locked, and the key was mine. That night, I left the lease folder on the table, unopened but solid. Proof that I was finally building a life that didn't need their permission. The next evening, my phone lit up again. This time, when I answered, both their voices came through. He'd put me on speaker. I heard the scrape of a chair, the edge of my mother's breath. Then her words hit fast. You're punishing the kids, Altha. They've done nothing wrong. Do you hear them crying? That's on you. Her tone was sharp, cutting. I stared at the lease folder on the table. My hand trembled, not with fear, but with anger. I'm not punishing anyone, I said slowly. I'm protecting myself. You should try it, silence. Then her scoff. That's selfish. Family doesn't shut doors. Family helps. I leaned forward, pressing the phone to my ear. Family also doesn't lie, I said. You rented out Clara's house, pretended you were stranded, and dumped it all on me. That's not help. That's use. For once, she didn't have a quick reply. I heard the faint creak of floorboards, her shifting in place. Then my father's voice, low and pleading. Altha, calm down. It's gotten out of hand. We can fix this. Quietly, quietly. The word wrapped around me like a net. That was always his way. Smooth things over. Keep the peace. Don't make waves. His silence yesterday. His silence 5 years ago. His silence every time she tore me down. It all built up to that single request. Dad, I said, voice trembling but steady. Your silence is just another yes to her. If you won't defend me, then stop asking me to defend myself less. On the other end, nothing. Only a faint shuffle, the sound of someone covering the receiver. Then my father's breath, ragged, suspended between us. I ended the call before he could choose. The apartment fell back into stillness. The only sound was the low hum of the fridge. I set the phone down, pulse hammering. There was no undoing what I had said. I reached for the folder and slid it open, bracing myself. Inside was more than my lease. After my grandmother's death, I'd tucked away envelopes, papers I hadn't dared open for months. That night, I laid them out across the table. The estate files were orderly, her handwriting firm in the margins. For years, I'd believed my mother ruled everything, that she held the keys to tuition money, the Bainbridge house, every decision that shaped us. She spoke with such conviction, and my father never challenged her. His silence had become truth. But the ink told another story. The accounts my mother flaunted weren't in her name. The trust for Clara's children had been reassigned to my cousin Leora. The medical directive listed Marta Cohen, a neighbor my grandmother trusted more than her own daughter. The Bainbridge deed was still intact, but the clause beneath it stopped me cold. This property shall not be transferred to any heir who disregards the boundaries of the estate holder. I traced the words, throat tightening. Boundaries written into law. My grandmother had seen what I only now accepted. My mother's hunger would devour everything if left unchecked. She had built her defense in advance, quiet but absolute. I thought of my father again, all his "it's complicated" excuses, all his absences disguised as neutrality. He'd let her version stand, let me believe she had the power. In truth, he'd given it to her through inaction, his silence letting her reign unchecked. I stacked the papers again, but their meaning no longer hid. My grandmother had already drawn the line. I only had to decide to stay behind it. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room as I shut the folder, knowing the next step would hurt more than words. The calls stopped after that night. No more buzzing phone. No more text demanding entry or explanations. 3 days passed, each quieter than the last. For once, I wasn't waiting for the next intrusion. At first, the silence felt unnatural, like the stillness before a storm, but it never broke. Each morning, I woke to the sound of gulls drifting in from Elliott Bay, buses groaning down Broadway. The noise belonged to the city now, not my parents. I let it surround me. I brewed my coffee strong, no sugar, no one wrinkling their nose at the bitterness. I ate when I was hungry, not when someone else was watching. Even the air felt lighter, walls no longer heavy with tension. For the first time in years, I wasn't searching for approval. At night, the folder stayed on the table, unopened but steady. Knowing it was there was enough. Its words no longer haunted me, they grounded me. My grandmother had written a truth my parents couldn't erase, and I had chosen to live inside it. By the third evening, I stopped checking my phone. If their names appeared, it didn't matter. Their silence wasn't punishment, it was space. And in that space, my own thoughts finally had room to breathe. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and stood in the quiet of my apartment, knowing the next choice was mine alone. The lease folder sat waiting on the table. This time I didn't hesitate. I signed each page slowly, pressing hard enough for the ink to leave grooves. No father's signature, no mother's conditions, no hidden clauses. Just my name. Clean, steady mine. When the manager handed me the keys, the weight of the metal felt like a promise. I walked through the apartment again, empty rooms echoing with possibility. The walls were bare, the windows streaked, but the emptiness didn't ache. It felt earned. I hung a single photo on the wall, not of my parents, but of my grandmother in her garden, sunlight cutting across her face. She had known the cost of silence and chosen to write her boundaries in permanence. I was simply continuing what she began. For years, I'd been told family meant obligation, that saying no was betrayal, that love demanded sacrifice. But sitting in my own living room, lease papers stacked beside me, I saw it clearly. Family should be chosen, not endured. Love should never be a currency traded for compliance. Outside, the rain began again, a soft patter against the glass. I curled into the armchair, coffee cooling beside me, the keys still in my palm. The voices that once filled every corner of my life were gone, replaced by the quiet I had built. I looked at the door, its new lock glinting faintly in the lamplight, and felt the truth settle deep. I warned them, and this time, I kept my word.